name is JC, and I'm a clinical exercise physiologist and a cancer exercise specialist. And today we're going to talk about the best muscle building routine after cancer. Now, we're going to dive deep into how many days you need to exercise, what exercises you should be doing, how many reps, how many sets, and what happens when you have cancer fatigue. How do you still make this happen? So, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing you need to know is that you can build muscle even 1 day a week. You can build muscle 2 days a week and 3 days a week and 4 days a week, even as little as 1 day a week. Yes, I said you can do it. Now, the more days, the more muscle you're going to be able to put on. At 1 day a week, consistently, just one time a week, you're not going to notice any different in your muscle mass. Now, you're going to be able to build a little bit, maybe a quarter of a pound, maybe a half of a quarter of a pound of muscle, or you're going to maintain weight or muscle at that point. But you're not going to be building on a lot of muscle mass. That being said, the best routine in my experience and what I've seen in the research and what's most practical for most cancer survivors is 3 days a week. If you love working out, go for 4. If you do not like working out, 2 is, I would say, the minimum to actually be serious about building muscle. If you're doing once a week, are you going to build muscle? Yes, but you're going to have to be having some severe side effects to be doing just once a week uh, that are really stopping you from exercise. So even once a week is fine, but we really want to shoot for 3 days a week. Now, what's the reason for 3 days a week? Muscle grows from constant stimulus, which means that you need to work out the muscle more than once a week, more than twice a week to really see some benefits. Because the more constant pressure or force or stimulus that it gets, the more that muscle is going to grow. So that's why 2 to 3 days a week is best. Because if you do 2 days a week of working out, you're going to be hitting the same muscle group twice. If you do 3 days a week of working out, you're going to be hitting the same muscle group either 2 or 3 times per week. And I can show you how to split it up. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to have 1 day of just one body part. The common bodybuilding approach is where you have, just legs, just arms, just chest. That is fine for some people, but not for somebody after cancer unless it's very specific for the reason they are doing it. I would program it for some people, but they have to meet certain qualifications for me to even reach that. And then in that perspective, I let them know, hey, this isn't the best for muscle building. This is just to kind of help you stay active a little bit each and every day. Um, but anyways, I digress. That's not the point. Let's keep going with the whole muscle idea, right? So you want to build full body days into your routine. And that sounds pretty, let's use the word complicated, but it's a lot more simpler than it sounds. All you're going to do is about 4 main exercises. If you do these 4 main exercises, you're going to hit your full body. Now, if you have the extra energy and you can do it, you're going to be doing 8 exercises, but you're going to be supersetting into blocks of 4. I'll explain that here a little bit later. So the 4 main exercises is you're going to do a leg exercise. You're going to do a row exercise. You're going to do a pulling exercise. And then you're going to do a core exercise. Those are your 4 main blocks. And when I say block, it's like groups of exercises. So the first block can either be a core or it could be a leg. You want that first block, whatever you want to focus on for that day is your first block of exercise. So let's say you're doing 3 days a week, right? Then let's say on Monday, your focus is mostly going to be legs. So your first exercise of that day is going to be a leg exercise. Let's say on Wednesday, your focus is going to be your back. So that day, the back exercise is going to be your first exercise. And let's say Friday, you want to focus more on your core, then core will be the first one, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, Within each of those days, so you have 3 days a week, you should always have a leg, you should always have a pull, you should always have a row, and you should always have a push, and then you should always have a core exercise. You're going to alternate the exercise that you do. So for the leg exercise, you should always have a squat. You should always have a hinge, and you should always have some form of a single leg movement. So this is where people get lost because there's way too many exercises out online, and they think they got to do everything on leg day. They think they got to do everything throughout the day, throughout the week, and then they just get messed up with everything that's going on and everything that YouTube is telling them and TikTok or whatever. So only those three exercises. From there, you just make it harder as you go. But that's all you need. You don't need to be doing any other fancy work. Squat, hinge, and a single leg. So for example, let's stick with the 3 days example. You got a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. Monday is a squat. Wednesday is a hinge. Friday is a single leg exercise. What are single leg exercises? A step up. That's going to be your simplest variation. Level 2 is a lunge. So once you get really strong at the step ups, then you transfer into doing a lunge. And level 3 is a split squat. So like a Bulgarian split squat. That's your level 3. Once you have a good step up, once you have a good sorry, I just got a text message, wanted to make sure. Once you have a good step up, once you have a good lunge, then you do the Bulgarian split squat. And that is the best 3 exercises for the single leg, right? So you want to make sure you're progressing with those variations. Same thing with the squat. The squat is going to be just your body weight. Then it's going to be a goblet. Then it's going to be a bottom loaded. Then it's going to be a barbell squat. Those are your 3 variations. Your hip hinges is going to be on the floor doing a glute bridge, a hip hinge, and then the last one is going to be an RDL, so a Romanian. Those are your big 3 for those exercises. You want to progress. So if I'm starting out with a beginner, let's say you've never worked out in your life. Let's say you just had cancer, you've never exercised in your life, you haven't worked out for the past 6 months. You're not starting with the barbell back squat. You're starting with the body weight sit to stand on Monday, Wednesday a glute bridge, and then Friday a step up. Because we want to start with the lowest threshold until you feel comfortable with those movements. You strengthen your glutes, you strengthen your quads, you strengthen your back, and you strengthen your core, so that way you can do the other exercises. Okay? That's for the legs. Boom. I'm giving you guys the routine right here, so that way you can go ahead and do it, feel stronger, get better, and build more muscle as you go either through treatment or out of treatment. Second thing you want to focus on is you're going to need a pull exercise. Okay? There's 2 variations of a pull exercise. There is a vertical pull and a horizontal pull exercise. Okay? Which one you do is going to be dependent on your body. So, there are some people, especially after cancer and after surgery, you cannot lift your hands above your head. So, you're not going to do a vertical pulling movement. As an example is you wouldn't do a lat pull down. You wouldn't do a close grip chin up on a machine. You wouldn't do a high row. All those are vertical pulling movements. Instead, you would do a horizontal pulling movement, a machine pull, a seated pull, a dumbbell row, a supported row, any rowing movement you can do. So whether you do the vertical or the horizontal depends on the limitations that you have on your shoulders. Generally speaking, especially for breast cancer, head and neck cancer survivors, I was trying to think of anybody else. Or if you have any limitations, pains, aches, discomfort on your shoulders, chest or shoulders, you don't want to be doing vertical pulling. You would just want to stick to horizontal pulling motions. Those are going to be the best for you. Once you have full range of motion on your shoulder, then you can do the vertical pulling with a lighter weight. So, same exact thing. You're going to do 3 different exercises that are horizontally pulling. Now, let's assume you can do both vertical and horizontal pulling without any issues. Then what you're going to do is one day you're going to do a horizontal pull, let's say on Monday. And then on Wednesday, you're going to do a vertical pull. And then on Friday, you just repeat one of those again. So it could be a horizontal or a vertical pull, whatever you feel comfortable with. And that's it. That's your 3 pulling exercises. If you can't do a vertical pull or you can't do one or the other, then you just choose 3 different exercises. There's a ton of them. There's a lot of exercises that you can choose from that are vertical pulling exercises or horizontal pulling exercises for just a 2 or 3 day split. Now, the same thing goes for your pushing exercises or your pressing exercises. You have a horizontal push and then you have a vertical push. Those 3 exercises, or sorry, those 2 movements you want to fill up in your day. Same thing, breast cancer, head and neck cancer survivors, maybe sometimes lymphomas. It depends on the where the lymphoma was. You can do one or the other. Such you can either do the horizontal pull or you can do the vertical pull. Push. It really depends what the limitation is on your shoulders. So choose one or the other. So same exact program, you either do a horizontal push or a vertical push, you know, 3 times a week for 3 different exercises. I'm going to be a little bit more specific on this exercise because it involves your shoulders. So if you can't really go vertical, then you want to go diagonal. So 3 exercises that are great that I always recommend with is starting with a body weight incline push up. So finding something that's about chest height to do a push up on. And then you make that exercise harder by finding something that's lower. So you find something chest height, belly button height, waist height, knee height. Those are your 4 levels of a push up. I got to sneeze. Excuse me. Now, from there, that's your Monday. Your Wednesday, it's going to be some sort of a same pushing or flying movement. So a chest fly on the ground, a flat surface, or a chest press on a flat surface where your elbows can't go past your chest. So if I'm laying down on the ground, I press up and I bring my elbows down and my elbows touch the floor. That is called a flat surface, or that's called a flat press or a flat fly. Those are the exercises that you want to do. So you do a flat press, and then on a Friday, you do a flat fly. So you do the chest fly where you bring those arms all the way out to the side and then back in front of you without bending the elbows. That is a fly movement. And those are going to be what you're going to do for your chest. A variation of a push up, a variation of a flat press, and then a variation of a flat fly exercise. That's your 3 foundational movements to strengthen your chest and shoulders on the horizontal movements. Okay. Vertical is always above the head. Horizontal is obviously in front of the nipples. Okay. Um, so we've talked about the leg exercises. We've talked about the uh, pulling exercises. We've talked about the pushing exercises. The last thing that you're going to need is a core exercise. Now, when people think of core exercises, they think of only crunches, maybe some Russian twists, and then that's maybe bicycles, but that's pretty much it. There's like 8 different ways to train your core. Your core is not just doing crunches or your abs. Your core is basically your obliques, your lower back, your hip flexors, and your abdominals. Now, your abdominals is basically the outer layer and then the inner layer. Your obliques is the outer layer and then the inner layer. And then in your back, you actually have muscles that go through your spine, which is also important for the core. And then you have what's called like the QL, which is the quadrilateral lumborum, which is also part of your core. So core is almost anything between the rib cage and the pelvis, basically. That is your whole core. And you want to train all those movements and exercises that function within that space. So there's 8 different ways to train them. I don't want you to focus on all 8 to start. What I want you to do is focus on stability first. So stability is going to be a plank. It's not an exercise that you're crunching with. It's always going to be a plank. I need you to get stronger at doing a plank on your elbows, not on your wrist. A plank on your elbows. You can start doing a plank with the knees bent, or if that's uncomfortable, you can do a high plank, like on a surface, putting your hands on a surface that's about the height of your waist. That could be a couch, for example. That's also doing a plank, some sort of stability exercise that focuses on keeping your core in one flat um, spacing from each other. So you don't want the pelvis to drop. You don't want the hips to be too high. You want a nice straight line on your core. That is a stability exercise. That is a foundational movement. That's going to be on your Mondays. On your Wednesdays, then you're going to do your anti-rotation. So your core rotates from side to side, right? You want an exercise that stops your core from rotating, or you want to practice stopping your core from rotating. Let's put it that way. So what you're going to do is a Pallof press or a Pallof hold. If you don't know what these exercises are, by the way, I'll put them in the link in below so you can actually see them and practice them and learn how to do them. But it's basically where you hold the weight in front of you and the band or a cable is pulling you to the side. So you're holding the cable or a band in front of you, and that band is tied laterally to you. So that band is pulling you sideways, making your torso twist, but you're just fighting that desire of the band to make you turn to the side. So you're going to do an anti-rotation exercise. And you can just literally look up on Google as well, on my YouTube, anti-rotation or a Pallof hold, and you're going to be able to see these exercises. Now, the last one that you're going to do is some sort of carry. The biggest one is going to be a farmer's carry. The reason you're doing a farmer's carry with only one weight is because when you have the weight, let's say on your left side, that weight is going to want to shift your body towards the left, and the right side of your body needs to tighten up. So you're going to work the opposite side of your body, meanwhile holding the weight. So it's going to work your grip, your balance, and your core all in one exercise. All three of these exercises are basically what's called kind of like stability exercises for your core. That is the foundation. This is what you should be doing before you ever get into crunching, doing sit-ups, doing anything at all on the floor. Most of these exercises, actually, yeah, almost all these exercises can be done in an elevated surface or standing up. So you're basically working your core without even getting on the ground. Now, those three core exercises is the foundations that you want to use before while you're trying to build muscle, but before you start putting on extra weight on your back, in front of you, because your core and your pelvis alignment is what basically is going to stop you from injuring yourself when you exercise. Your body is very weak after cancer because of chemotherapy, because of sitting so much, because of that chemo chair, because it's forced you to be weaker, malnutrition. There's so many reasons why your body is weaker. And we want to strengthen every single system in your body before we start putting on a lot of load. And all of these are safe exercises that you can do that's going to focus on strengthening your body, helping it, keeping it coordinated, functioning in one unit. So that way there's no leaks and different injuries that can happen throughout exercise. Because if your shoulders are weak or your knees are weak or your hips are weak, then when you do certain movements, it's going to cause more aches and pains. And we want to avoid that. So we start by setting up the right foundation and build up from there. As you start doing more reps, more sets, you do these exercises several times throughout the week, you're going to notice that you're going to feel stronger. And over the course of 10 to 12 weeks, you're going to be putting on more muscle as you go. Because over the course of 10 to 12 weeks, you shouldn't be doing a bodyweight squat anymore. You should be doing a goblet squat. You should be doing a lunge. So you're making the exercises harder, which helps you build muscle as you go. Because to build muscle, you need to exercise and you need to do what's called progressive overload, which simply means you need to work out harder than what your body is used to. So if you're always doing bodyweight squats, you're not building any muscle. You're not really holding on to any or building up any strength. Your body always needs to do something that's harder than it used to improve. Okay. So key principles within these workouts or within these exercises is to make sure that you are working out close to failure. So that means, you know, failure is not being able to do one good repetition with good form. So what I mean by that is if you go to squat and your hips just come up before your chest comes up, That is a bad form, then you've reached failure. You should always be able to do a good form within that exercise. And you come 3 to 4 reps shy. So let's say you did 10 squats and you felt like you're like, honestly, I could have done 10 more. You're nowhere near close to failure. But let's say you did 10 squats and you're like, I only had 3 left. You're close to failure. Okay. So you want to train close to failure. Second thing you want to do is you want to repeat the exercises multiple times throughout the week. So, like I said, or target that same muscle group multiple times a week. That's a better way of putting it. And you're doing that by just doing 2 to 3 days a week. And the third thing is you want to have longer rest periods. Do not combine exercises. So you can superset, which superset means, by the way, that you work out different muscle groups in one block of exercises. So it's okay to do your leg exercise and then do a bicep curl because those legs are not affecting your bicep curls. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do a pulling movement, which also works on your biceps, and then bicep curls. That's not what you want to do. Okay. So you want to do opposite muscle groups. So, for example, if you wanted to, you could do a plank and a squat. That's okay. You can do a floor press and a lat pull down. That's okay because they're opposite muscle groups. They're not working out the same muscle groups. What you don't want to do is combining exercise. So, doing a curl and then doing a press, curl and then press, or um, what's the other one? Row and then tricep extension. That is a pointless exercise that does not do anything for building up muscle other than helping you just move. Great exercises for group classes because they're fun, they're a little bit challenging to do, keeps you a little bit coordinated, but they're not good for building muscle. So separate your workouts, work close to failure, and repeat those muscle or target that muscle group more than once throughout the week. From there, yes, eating protein is important. What I always recommend is over 100 grams of protein on the days that you are actually lifting weights. Now, that sounds a lot harder than it truly is, but I promise you, if you logged your protein, you'd notice that you're not too far away from it. Some people might have a really hard time eating, and if you have a challenge, if it's a hard time eating or if it's challenging for you to eat, meet with a dietitian. I know 2 great dietitians who are wonderful who can help you, uh, you know, um, work through all the different barriers of eating because of chemo treatment. But hitting over 100 grams or so on the days that you exercise is great. You don't need to do that every single day, but definitely on the days that you exercise at least. And then you obviously want to make sure that you are sleeping well, avoiding alcohol, things like that. The same things that help you stay healthy is the same things that help you build muscle. The only difference is that you can do everything healthy, and if you don't lift weights, you will never build muscle. You can eat all the protein in the world, and if you don't lift weights, you will never build muscle. Comes from lifting weights. You cannot build muscle if you don't lift weights. My biggest pet peeve is I need to eat enough protein. I'm like, okay, if you're not eating enough protein, sorry, if you're not lifting weights and you're just eating more protein, all you're doing is just peeing it out because your body's not using it. So lift weights, yes, eat protein, improve your sleep. If you have any questions, please, please, please ask them below. The last thing I have for you, because you stayed so long, is I have a free gift for you. I do have a muscle building guide. So if you went through all this and you're like, I wasn't able to take notes, or I would like to get the muscle building guide, and it comes with the free workout plan, it comes with everything that we talked about today, all ready for you, that's set and just ready for you to follow it. Click the link below to get my free muscle building guide in your email. Like I said, it's going to talk to you about the principles. It's going to show you how much protein you need, and it's going to have a free workout program for you to follow so you can start building muscle today. And if you have any issues with cancer fatigue, stay tuned because that's going to be on the next video. Take care.